Welcome to the AgEmerge Podcast, brought to you by Ag Solutions Network. Your farming challenges are unique, so your practices should be too. We're here to share emerging ideas, build connections, and provoke conversation.
Get ready to improve your soil, your crops, your livestock, and your family's livelihood. I'm your producer, Kim Chase.
And I'm your host, Monty Bottens. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for joining us. At the end of 2023, we took the AgEmerge Podcast on the road to the Big Soil Health event in Cedar Falls, Iowa. It was a great event where hundreds of farmers and ranchers from all over the country gathered to learn, share, and encourage each other to continue to adopt soil health strategies. We asked attendees to join us in our on-the-road studio to share their soil health journey. And I want to tell you, get a tissue. These are heartfelt, raw stories of family, legacy, and amazing soil health. Thank you to our wonderful guests for sharing, and don't miss a single story. Let's jump right in.
Well, now we're joined by the brains of this whole show, Liz Haney and Seth Watkins. Both have been on the AgEmerge Podcast before, so welcome, guys. Thanks for taking some time out to be here. What's your thoughts so far? What are you hearing in the halls? What are people learning? What do you observe so far that really gets you excited about this conference?
Well, thank you for having us. I think the neatest thing that I've seen from this conference is this morning it was after Jerry Hatfield. Who spoke after Jerry?
Jay Fuhrer.
Fuhrer.
Jay Fuhrer. They talked about change, and that you finally change when the pain of change is less than the pain of doing the same thing. And this conference is always a little bit this way, but we're all here to learn how to do a better job and make a better future. And I've felt that is the theme of the conference, and we're hanging out with people we might not always hang out with, and we're having a good time, and we're here for a common goal. And it's neat.
You know how many farmers it takes to change a light bulb? Have you ever heard this one?
None. Well, we don't need a lot.
Change. Why change? So we can get stuck in our ways, right?
Mhm.
I mean, there's certain things I'm sure, Seth, you've gotten stuck in your ways. I'm guilty of it, that's for sure. But I think the only thing I would add to that, I was thinking while he was giving that presentation, is I think the pain doesn't have to be equal to. I think the pain of change has to be significantly less than the pain, because we'll just kind of sit in our own poopy diaper for a long time.
It was your presentation. You're the one that talked about that.
No,
Yeah.
Jay did.
Jay did.
Okay.
Jay did.
I
Okay.
remember Jay
Okay.
saying that, and I thought, you know what? I think it actually has to be. I think. Have you noticed that, Liz, when you're working with farmers, doesn't it take some sort of maybe an event, change in the family, change in acreage, something that just clicks with them to be willing to go a little further? Is that fair? Or
Yeah, I think it's fair, but sometimes it is really dramatic. I mean, I've had farmers that were like on the verge of giving it up, suicide, whatever, and then they figured out they could do stuff a different way, so they could live for growing instead of for killing, and that's what made a difference.
so it's not. Maybe it should be soil hope instead of soil health.
It really is soil hope.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that is a big thing. And I used to work with a lot of California dairymen. And when we went through what we called Dairy Armageddon in 2009, I knew 3 dairymen that took their lives.
Yeah.
And it's just in California there. And it's a real problem. So, I mean, Seth, that how soil health and our practices affected your family, really your family got you to where you are, right? I mean, that was a watershed moment.
Yeah. Well, I was actually starting before my kids had been born. That was the thing. And as farmers, we don't usually go to our co-op meetings and hear a talk about surface water or some of the things that might be happening because of what we're doing. We just hear about yield. And then as I learned more, I think the watershed moment for me was when I figured out it doesn't have to be this way. I'm not talking about going fully organic or anything like that. I use chemicals, and I probably will for the foreseeable future. But what I know now is I can use those and they stay on the plant and they don't go into our groundwater. They don't go into our surface water or rivers and streams. And I know there is a path forward to use less and less and less every year. And that's what I've always stressed to folks too. There's a lot of challenges in a modern world, but we can do this in a way that protects our environment.
And I think that's been a real theme here is it's not this black and white, yes and no, organic or not, it's life isn't that simple. There's a gradient or a spectrum of things that we can move down that journey to get a little better every year. I've heard a lot from people in the audience, just, simple of how do I start cover crops, and other people, wow, I could see bringing livestock back, or I could see getting more crops and such. So, okay. So let me ask you this. What do you hope, Liz? I mean, this is a lot of work for you. What will you consider it success when you hear people have done something different as a result? How do you measure that success out of the event?
So my bar is that one person walks away with hope or finding something they can change that's going to work for them. So it's a lot of work for one person.
So if you get two, it's half as much work per person.
Yes.
Is that how that works?
It would be. Yeah.
And I suspect you're going to get more than one, Liz.
But really, if one person gets something out of it, I'm happy.
It's worth it.
Yeah.
Absolutely. What do you think, Seth?
Actually, I want to talk about Liz for a minute because I was going to introduce her as a speaker, and I thought about what I wanted to say. And when you talked about, the dairy farmers you knew that took their lives, when you talked about some other things, this is a fairly isolated vocation. And a lot of us, myself included, believe it or not, actually do very well being kind of quietly introverted on the farm when, you kind of suck it up and don't complain about it. Liz has brought us together, which is maybe the most important thing that a lot of people take for granted. And she's brought us together in a way that is open and that we have a chance to learn. But where I was going to kind of go with it is, you probably think in the tractor cab too. I think a lot because it's solitude.
What else is there to do?
There's sympathy, which is really meaningless to me. You're driving by, look at the poor little dog on the side of the road. There's compassion, where you actually take time to think about it and say, shit, that dog's hungry. I'm going to get him something to eat, maybe even take him to a shelter. And then there's altruism. And there's very little altruism in our world where someone actually actively organizes and leads and takes us to something different. And Liz is the most altruistic person I know. And I want to compliment her for that.
I think that right there, explains the spam that is on the table right here. Okay. So this is altruisticness taken to the funny. So we have to tell a little story, and I'm going to repeat it again.
Okay.
But so we were together at a soil health event up at Tom Cotter's in Austin, Minnesota, home of Hormel. We got done at about 3:00 out in the field, and it was going to come back together for a barbecue at 6:00. And like, well, what do I do in Austin, Minnesota? I look it up, TripAdvisor. There's a spam museum. So I go to the spam museum. Didn't buy any spam, but learned all about spam. I'm just kind of weird like that. Bought a spam wine glass to have some wine at the dinner that night. And Liz, you saw that and you said, what the heck is spam, or a spam museum? So
yeah.
Anyway, she thought that was so hilarious. There's actually a whole case of spam that she flew in just for me. It's a really special touch. This is something I will probably never forget, is that somebody gave me a case of spam.
And you'll always have. I mean, it's like a Twinkie.
It will. I don't know if I'll save it, but the memory will save.
Again, you might.
You could have saved my life here. Think of how that is altruistic there. But no, I think one of the things I'm getting at is, everybody on a very personal basis, and you love the relationship that you have with everyone.
Yes.
And that love for people, I think, is what comes through here at this event.
I hope so. It's about community, and I want everybody to not feel like they're on an island.
Mm-hmm. No, that's great, because there's people from lots of different areas that are here. And I think that they can have that sense of community here, that safety, but then they know that when they go back home and they may be surrounded by people who are not interested in regenerative or maybe ridicule them, they can go back knowing that, hey, there is a group of peers that I can draw strength from.
Now they
Yeah.
know where the cool kids are, you know, I mean, there you go.
Well, if you're cool kids and you have to say you're cool kids, you may not be cool
It's
kids.
kind of like telling everybody you're famous.
That's right.
Yeah, that could be too. So I tried that in high school saying I was a cool kid. And yeah, as you can tell, I'm not a cool kid.
It's all relative.
What else? Kind of update us a little bit since you were on the podcast. It's been a little while for both of you. Any major news here in the last year, 18 months that want to make everybody aware of since you visited with us? You became a Leopold
And
award winner.
I did. I
That was one
received the
thing.
Leopold Award, which was nice. My daughter started Now I'm reading the ingredients.
Uh-oh.
I want to know.
Here we go.
You're a scientist. What is the difference between salt and sodium nitrate?
Mm. Well,
Sodium chloride. That's right. Salt, sodium chloride. I'm sorry. Back to this.
Nitrates are bad.
I am learning how to
Don't
plant
eat
trees.
them.
Yeah, and I'm having more time to enjoy my farm. You know, these practices have allowed me to pay my farm off. I'm out of debt. I am working on making my farm smaller so I can focus on certain things. A big part of this, and you know, I've heard Adam Chappelle talk about it. I've heard some other farmers talk about it. Is we have more time. And that might be, Lauren talked about this today, you know, when he received the Leopold Award this year. We have more time for our families, and you can't put a price on that. So I'm thankful that I've got my health, that I'm in a position that I do have my health, that I'm out of debt, and I'm actually getting to hang out with the people I always wanted to hang out with, you know, with my wife and kids.
oh, that's incredible. That's incredible. And think about how many more farmers you've worked with in the last couple of years since you were on the podcast, and the acres of impact.
Yeah, it's been a lot of farmers to work with. I
Yeah.
don't keep track of acres, but
Right.
not my thing. But yeah, and we're doing some really cool things. In fact, over lunch, met with a business partner, and we're gonna have a barbecue and brew festival in Wichita, Kansas, October 5th.
Nice.
Trying to get Cody Jinks.
Okay.
Like, big time stuff.
So is this going to be kind of like your brew festival that they had here, which is kind of unique to this, you know,
Yes.
local beers? It's going to be, so can
Similar.
people who would happen to raise pasture raised pork
Yes.
be able to bring and participate in a barbecue contest?
Yes, anybody doing any regenerative practice with any type of animal, and we're even thinking chickpea burgers if you want them.
Hey, now,
I know that was somebody else's idea.
I don't
not
know.
mine.
Spam could be better.
Spam
No.
burgers, yeah. But really, like, we want the consumers and the people that are eating food to understand where their food comes from. And so we thought that having a festival with food and drink and bouncy houses for the kids and music and stuff like that, and then farmers speaking, that they would start connecting back with the land. Because I mean, I grew up in a city. I didn't know, you know, who grew what, but I think it's really important people understand what farmers go through, because they like to villainize them a lot without actually knowing what they do.
They're people too, trying to do the right thing.
Yes.
So no, that's a fantastic idea. I love that. I might be there to sample.
Yeah,
Could
I'm
I be a
sure-
judge?
Yes.
I'm well qualified.
Okay.
You know,
Okay. You're on the panel now.
Oh man, awesome. I love being a judge of a barbecue contest. So, what else we need to visit about before we got to get back to the next session and those kind of things? Other burning ideas, thoughts?
I'm just thinking 3 days of peace, love, and regenerative ag in Wichita, Kansas, man. I mean, this is going to be
Yes.
awesome.
It's going to be amazing.
Cool.
No, I have to go watch my business partner talk or I'll get in trouble.
That will be a problem. So anyway, thanks guys for joining us. Thanks for all the impact that you're doing and the lives that you're changing and the soil that you're saving. It's you're making a big difference,
Thank
and
you.
it's neat to see it continue to grow and the momentum continue to move forward. So
Thank-
awesome.
Glad you're
Thanks for your
here.
time.
Yeah, thank you
It-
for what
it-
you do.
Hey, it's a good time to be here. So take care.
My name is Sue Kuennen. I live on a farm between Claremont and West Union, Iowa, up in northeast Iowa. I'm about 40 miles from Minnesota and about 40 miles from Wisconsin. So way up there in the corner. As far as titles, I was nominated and selected as the 2016 Iowa Woman Conservationist of the Year. And last year in 2022, I was nominated, and there were 4 of us women that were given a title as Iowa Women in Ag Leadership Award. From all of that information, I was contacted by Jean Els to be a stewardship ambassador. So I talked to different groups, agencies to promote some of the conservation things that I have been doing on my farm. When I heard Monty talk today and he talked about coming in to visit with him and getting a free can of Spam, well, here I am. So thank you for having me today.
Well, that's fantastic for sharing all that, and congratulations for doing the right thing. But I think it's also great that you've been recognized for doing the right thing. So that's wonderful. So what do you feel are some of the practices that you've done that have earned that recognition there? What have you done to date to promote soil health on your own farm in the driftless region?
And that's where I am at, is in the driftless region. After I lost my husband in 2011, I felt like I was a fish in a fish bowl. Everybody was watching this single woman and what she was going to do. Was she going to make it on the farm? Was she going to sell it? What kind of practices was she going to do? What helped me more than anything, and it was of nothing that I did, was a farm right across the road from me. A larger corporation bought, tore out every tree, every fence, everything. And on my side of the road, I was putting in, these wonderful waterways and edge of field borders and doing some timber stand improvement, rotational crops. I'd have corn one year, beans the next, that kind of thing. So I was like an example for people to drive down Highway 18, look to the north and look to the south. And that's kind of what happened.
So you're here for a reason. You've done a lot of practices so far, and
Mhm.
conservation-oriented practices, and you have a good handle on it. So what are you hoping to learn here, or what have you learned here so far that's of interest to you?
The thing that blew me out of the water today was the no fence grazing, something that you have incorporated. It was like, wow, because where I have my farm, I have border fences, but I don't have anything internal. And I've always known that part of the best way to regenerate the fields is to have livestock on it. And I would have to have, different kinds of fencing to make that happen. Right now, what I do have grazing out there are deer, the white-tailed deer. That's the best I can do. And they do leave behind their droppings. I have them in my gardens. They come right up to my house and they eat the hostas, the candy that I have in my yard for them.
Well, good. So the virtual fencing, something you really weren't looking for when you came here,
No
but
clue.
after hearing it, it's something that you would consider for your own farm, or it would open it up for anyone else who'd want to graze your ground
Right.
using that virtual fencing, because you have the perimeter in place, just don't have a
Mhm.
way to regeneratively graze it.
Mhm.
So, well, that's interesting. Anything else you hoping to see or have seen so far that's interesting?
The one thing that I would like to do is give a shout out to Lauren Steinlage. Lauren lives probably all of 7 miles from where I'm at, and I've known of him my entire life. Basically, our parents grew up neighbors to each other in the St. Lucas community. In fact, one of the farms that my parents own is one that Lauren's uncle had at one time. So I've just known their family for many years, and I am so glad that he is being recognized for some of the innovative practices that he has incorporated, not only in his farm, but he is so willing to share with so many people that will just listen to him. Just an outstanding man.
And for those of you that don't know, Lauren was this year's recipient of the Leopold Conservation Award for the state of Iowa, and he'll be in the rankings for the national winner too. So, which I think he probably has a very strong chance at. So,
Well, we'll wish him
pretty
luck.
excited about that.
Mhm.
All right. So, what are you going to do different when you get home?
Well,
What's your next right step?
golly, that's a wide open question, mainly because the farm that I own, it's 160 acres. And then this past June, I purchased my neighbor's farm. He came to me with a contract that I couldn't refuse. So now I own approximately, between 3 and 320 acres. All of that land is in CRP. So with it being in CRP, I don't have any practices that I can implement immediately, but I do have a field about 30 acres that will be coming out of CRP in approximately 4 years. So now I'm looking at what am I going to do to that? And I know I will have a pollinator strip right through the middle of it. I'll have edge of field border, and I'm looking at that being organic, 100% organic. So coming here is giving me the goal planning and setting that I need to do.
And that's interesting you bring that up because when I bought that ranch land of ours, it was in CRP also.
Mhm.
So it was 18 years into 20 years of contract. So we actually bought out the CRP payment and grazed it August, September. So we paid back, I think, 35% of the payment, brought the cattle in to start grazing the weeds that had accumulated over time in order to help start to begin that process of regenerating. So that's something you can do. And I like your idea of going organic because you don't have any waiting period. Nothing's happened to it. So all good uses of your resource. So I think God's given us an amazing mind. We should use it. So I'm glad to see how you're thinking.
Absolutely. So thank you for having me
Awesome.
today.
Enjoy the rest of the
Mhm.
conference. Nice to meet you, Sue.
And I'll enjoy the spam too.
Oh, there you go. We'll tell people about that later.
Very good.
Thanks. Well, now we're joined by Evan and Rochelle Schad from Wisconsin. Welcome, guys. Glad you could take a minute and step in and tell us a little bit more about what you got going on.
Thanks, Monty.
So you got to tell us your story. It's pretty neat and kind of where you've gotten to what you're doing today.
Yeah, we're both farm kids. I'm from Wisconsin, Evan's from Iowa, and
They let you in?
They did, yeah.
I
I
kept
fit
it.
right in here.
Wow.
And we've been working in the agriculture industry our entire careers. We grew up as farm kids. It was our goal after we got married to have some of our own farmland, really to do whatever inspired us. And so that's kind of where we started this journey. We have, 50 acres, so we're not big by any means, but we're looking to grow. And really the challenge in our area is to add value to our crops so that we can continue to grow and find additional acres, because land is very valuable, as I think everybody listening can attest to.
I like you saying very valuable. Most everybody would say it's really expensive. So
That too.
there you go. So in order to kind of offset what you're doing with a little smaller acreage and
Mhm.
create more revenue, keep more of what you're doing on the farm, you decided to, well, what can we do with a regeneratively raised product to preserve that value versus just let it go into the commodity stream with anything else? So
Exactly.
how did you guys come to that conclusion and talk about what you're pursuing now in that regard?
Well, you could say it's planned, but you kind of just start in a direction and you stumble into the next
Oh,
logical step.
It sounds much more professional if it's planned. you know.
Totally had a plan.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. On our acreage, you kind of look at commercial production. It's like, all right, we're either just going to farm corn, soybeans and say we farm and subsidize it off the farm, or how can you think differently? And we started going down growing unique grains in the front yard and backyard and seeing what's
That's the theory, right?
to test the theory of flavor. And then we got into milling. We had that opportunity in growing grains for that direct to consumer connection. And it's just been really cool how the regenerative interest is weaved in with that milling interest of, we started planting covers, started no-till, and as soon as it's timed, the next step is to look at that third crop and get a rotation. And lo and behold, the milling comes around and we can start growing our own grains for that. So the soil health journey and the milling journey have really come together better than we could have planned on our own. So
you're saying that if you grow wheat, you can get more than $6.50 a bushel for it, or if you grow corn, you can get more than $4.50 a bushel?
Correct.
Oh, really?
Yeah, dollar
Really?
per pound versus dollar per bushel is
Oh.
the goal.
Different mindset there.
That's 56 to 60 times better, right?
Potentially, yeah, that's the idea. That's the idea.
Okay, so talk to us about the milling operation that you're doing now and getting direct to consumers.
Yeah, so we had dabbled in, a few ideas. We had raised livestock previous just to figure out, where we wanted to go on our farm journey.
To figure out you don't want to raise livestock, is that what
I
you're
mean,
saying?
that's part of it.
We're hearing here it's supposed to circle back around
Yes.
again.
Oh,
Yes,
okay.
they'll come back around. I'm sure of it. But we really, I guess my passion is more on the food side. And so bringing that farm to food kind of together was really something we wanted to pursue. And so the more we learned about soil health and how that translates to nutrition, it really became obvious to us. And that's our niche. That's how we're going to tell our story, to advocate for the agriculture industry, but then also to connect with consumers really who care about where their food is coming from.
So is it possible to support your family on 50 acres alone doing this long term, you think?
We hope so.
Yeah, I think,
I think
we
there's
hope to
potential.
grow to even more acreage, and that incentivizes, that process. And we both still work, and that's been going well, but those are things we'll have to navigate in the future. And then, it gives our kids that hands-on. A lot of farm kids don't have that opportunity because farms get so big. My day job, I work in dairy cattle genetics. It's hard to even find a way for kids to get on the farm. And so this gives our kids, an easy, accessible way to be hands-on with ag again, so that we're not that last generation of farm kids that went off to school and worked in industry. And, that's important to us, I think deep down on our journey. So,
Well, I wouldn't discount that. That is definitely a strategic plan right there, that you're looking for that for your future generations. So
Mhm.
talk to us about your customers. Are they consumers, or are they chefs? A little bit of both.
Both.
What's the mix?
Yeah, we really have that direct to consumer connection.
Mhm.
So we sell on our website or have built partnerships with different retailers that are interested in the type of product we carry, the artisan nature of it. But then we've also understood that you can't sell all of your product in 2 and 5 pound bags
Mhm.
to consumers. So we've built some great relationships with restaurants, with bakeries, and continue just to find that right balance to move the crop that we have. So we're not
Mhm.
sitting on that for years. We want to make sure that it's cash flowing and it's
So you could have chose to do standard wheat and
Mhm.
just mill it and say, oh, it's locally raised and
Mhm.
direct to consumer.
Right.
But you've gone the route of ancient grains or heritage
Mhm.
grains, those kind of things. Have you looked at gluten free too, and those kind of niche markets, or just focusing mainly on the heritage process?
We get the question on gluten free, but with our processing facility, frankly, it's
You'd
just
have to have
not
a
possible
separate
yet.
facility. Okay.
Yeah, so that could be a future
Right.
expansion.
Now, how much are consumers, willing, where's your price point compared to general grocery store flowers or hominy, those kind of things that you're doing?
Yeah, it's definitely not your standard grocery store price. You
Mhm.
are going to pay a little bit more, but with the story and the connection to our family, to our land,
Mhm.
understanding our practices, that's really like a nuanced conversation that some
Right.
consumers really are craving right now, which is exciting. It's not a blanket statement, or we often get the question, "Are you organic?" And sometimes, for our consumers, it's very important. And that's a check the box. Yes, I'll support you. I'll buy your product. Or, oh, okay. Thanks for sharing more. It's not
Right.
necessarily the right fit. So there's plenty of consumers out there. We all eat. And so it's an exciting conversation to have.
So I think that's important for everybody to hear, is that you don't just have to take the lowest price. It's a different mindset versus being in the commodities. You can have a higher price point because you are telling your story. So,
Mhm.
a lot of people notice I always ask their story first thing on the podcast. I'm trying to help people understand where you're coming from, right? And
Mhm.
you're doing the same thing with your business, is helping to know that, we're a farming couple that's looking to raise ancient and bring it forward, but it's going to be a premium price for that too. So
yeah, and the
Right.
price thing is important to me long term as we grow, hopefully. To answer your question shortly, it's more for a product we think
Mhm.
justifiably so.
Mhm.
and if we do the right farming practices. But over time, like my experience on the commercial ag side, that size, scale, and efficiency does serve a purpose. It's easy to hate on the big farms, but large farms can do the right thing too. And that size scale brings accessibility and brings the cost down. So over the long term, like we want to be able to sell a 5-pound bag. It's probably still going to be more, but we want that to be accessible to blue collar people and not just be, this expensive flour that's kind of, we bake with it at special times. We want it to be accessible for that everyday culinary use in people's kitchens.
So being here, what have you learned so far? What are some takeaways? What are you going to do different next year or in the future when you get home?
Head swimming a little bit. I don't fully know the answer, especially after, the first speaker this morning, but we've made some baseline movements on, doing the no-till, doing the more diverse crop rotation, doing the cover crops, multi-species. So like we're seeing some of the soil health stuff move finally, like 2, 3, 4 years into this. So that's exciting. And just leveraging that more, better understanding that information's available to us, some of the within the year crop rotation, within the year, crop nutrition, sap testing, those type of things that sound like can really rev that engine up that we've built a bit of a foundation for. So,
well, good. Sounds good. Glad you shared.
Yeah,
and
thank
it's
you.
it's pretty exciting what you got going on. And I think it's important to remember we're farmers. We're not corn farmers or we're not dairy farmers. We're to create the greatest value we can out of the land that we're given to stewards. So it's neat to see how you're doing that and connecting directly to consumers. So awesome. Anything else?
no, it's long-time listener and
Oh, good.
first-time caller. So
Oh, there you go. That's awesome.
appreciate what you do, and the outside the box thinking is
I'm
definitely
not as
helped
fun
us.
as Dave Ramsey where you can shout we're debt free. You know,
Regenerative
or
farming.
regenerative.
Excellent.
Yeah, we're gonna have to come up with something a little better. So all right, guys. Thanks so much for dropping in.
Thank you.
Well, now we're sitting down with Jerry and Jen. Welcome. And you're from the great state of Wisconsin.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about your farm, where you're located, and crops you grow.
We're in Grant County, a conventional dairy farmer. Corn and alfalfa rotation, chop, corn for silage, do combine corn for grain. I'm looking to transition out of conventional dairy, the dairy altogether, actually. Got hooked up with the regenerative movement through a friend of mine at Farm Aid. She introduced me to the soil, what is it, SCI?
Soil carbon initiative.
Oh, yeah.
The Soil Carbon Initiative. I was accepted into their go-to market program.
Okay.
I'm one of the founding 50 farmers. Over the 2 years, I've got to know Liz Haney. Got to meet Ray Archuleta today. I know he was on my bucket list. I've met Dave Brown at an event he did in Baraboo, Wisconsin. And I'm trying to learn as much as I can. Well, it's a pretty big leap from the way I've been farming to where I want to be. Looking to go 100% no-till. I've been using covers, primarily rye for quite a few years on some of my acres. Biggest hurdle for me as a conventional confinement dairy is the amount of manure that we deal with. In regenerative circles, they talk about animal impact, and a lot of times I feel like I'm the Flint, Michigan of animal impact, and I'd like to get away from that. A lot of it's just getting on the right side of things, taking a critical evaluation of the way I farm, and I feel like there's a better way. 5th generation farm where we're at. I'd love to bring my daughters in someday. I don't want what I have now for them. I think this is a direction that I could provide for a 6th generation with something that's worth their time and effort.
I'd like
So-
to ask you about that. Fifth generation, has it been dairy all 5 generations?
Well, my dad focused on dairy when I started. We were at a 50 cow stanchion barn. We're milking like 70 cows. And then when I got out of high school, we went over 100, graduated from college, and just grew from within and got to where we are today. But Dad sold pigs when he built the 50 cow stanchion barn. We used to have laying hens that we sold off the farm. Those are gone. My grandpa worked off the farm. He built harvester silos for 18 years, dug the footers, was afraid of heights, never climbed one. And prior to that, it was always a mix of animals, a lot like what is talked about in regenerative, where you have multiple species. And so a lot of this isn't a stretch for me. I've got personal memory and historical knowledge of, we used to farm a lot different than the confinement model. We in confinement factory industrial model we're following today.
So it's a big decision for both of you to make to wind down the dairy. It sounds like that's in the near future, because it's twice a day, every day, no matter what. And that's a big deal. But I thought it was interesting what you said, so that you have something for the next generation, because dairying's tough, and it's been tough many times since, I worked with dairymen in California, and 2009 was horrific, and it's never really kind of come back since then. It's, maybe 1 year in 3, it's okay, but it's a tough business and a lot of work. So what does that path forward look like for you guys then, transitioning away from dairy? Will you transition them to beef, use those cows to do a beef herd, or will you just cold turkey and no more animals? What does that look like for your farm? What have you guys talked about?
Well, we've always maintained a cow calf herd.
Mhm.
So I've never lost that skill of actually having cattle on grass.
Mhm.
Right now we're around 60 cows. And I'm for the first time in my life actually trying to put together some kind of a business plan. It was always up to this point in my career it was just keeping up with the growth of the dairy herd and making decisions to facilitate that. That's a lot of what I find myself in now. I'm making decisions. The dairy drives my decisions. What's best for the factory, not necessarily what's best for the soil, for me personally, for my family. So yeah, I've got a small flock of sheep. Really enjoy the sheep. I brought them in when my daughters were young. We started with orphan lambs, something that was at a scale and a size that would help instill a love and appreciation of animals in them. So yeah, I see livestock being a part of it. I'd like to be more diversified than I am. When I look at the prospect of a drought at this point in my life, if I have a crop failure, purchasing enough feed to keep that engine running I can't even wrap my head around it. And at 330 cows, I'm a small potato anymore. When there's 3,000 cows down the road, 1,000 cows the other direction. So yeah, I'm hoping to, in my perfect world, I'd really like to not be a commodity farmer anymore. Because I guess in my mind, when I produce commodities, which is cheap and easily replaceable, then that makes me cheap and easily replaceable, and I prefer not to live with that on my shoulders.
That's a great comment. Great way to think of that. And I don't think a lot of commodity farmers think of themselves that way. But they probably haven't stopped to think about it because they're keeping the machinery going all the time, like you alluded to. So Jen, I'm going to ask you to jump in here just a little bit. Talk to us about this transition and journey that you guys have been on for the last couple of years, and your perspective on that, and some of the things that you've learned both at maybe this event or other events and that you've been to that are kind of supporting moving in this direction with your farm.
Like you just said, journey, that is probably a word that we've heard every speaker speak today and last night. Also a year ago when we came, everyone here is on a journey, whether they're just learning about regenerative ag, just everyone's learning. We're either at the beginning, the middle, the end, and no one person is ever left behind. Everyone is willing to share their information, to share the failures that they've had because they don't want someone else to make that mistake. We've met so many wonderful people in the last 2 years through Green America, the SCI, the Soil Carbon Initiative, here with the big soil health event. Brought us back a year later. We got to reconnect with friends that we'd met last year and form relationships with, but also meeting new people. Every time you turn around, it's, oh, I was thinking that, or yeah, we went through that, or welcome to the table. It's just a very welcoming environment and it makes you want to do better.
So how do you overcome? I'm going to ask you this because of being the spouse, how do you overcome that fear factor of the change and going really totally changing how you guys are doing your farm to the newer paradigm of farming? What's that like? Or you don't even worry about it. It's the right thing.
It is scary. That I think that's a word, that's another word that pretty much everyone we talk to is either, yes, it was scary when I did it, or it's scary as I'm doing it, or wow, looking back, that was a leap of faith, because it is a very big change. It's a lifestyle change. Farming is your job, but yet it becomes a part of who you are. And so therefore you're, like Jerry's saying, evaluating yourself as a person and what you're doing, and then trying to find a way to better yourself and to better your practices. And as you learn more, once you know better, then you have to change. You do the best you can until you know better. And then you look for ways to make those improvements.
So tell me about the sixth generation when you're retired, okay, and they're fully in charge. What's their farm going to look like? What's your vision of that, Jerry? You've got one, I guarantee it.
Yeah, my vision would be to be in harmony with nature and the natural systems. To have opportunities for them that match their skills and interests. That hasn't always been the case with me, that I was able to utilize all my talents. Like the last few years of conventional dairy farming, is the skill I use most is just endurance. Just kind of like the old Dunkin' Donuts commercial. It's waking up every morning. It's time to make the donuts. And sometimes meeting yourself coming in on the way out. It's I'd like to have things in place where they're not conflicted, where they're feeling like they're doing the right things, and bringing community back. That's the thing. I just finished Will Harris's book, and a lot of that I could really identify with. I'm really good at what I do. But just because you're good at something doesn't mean it's the right thing to be doing. So yeah, I'm looking for change and I'm trying to learn as much as I can. I'm trying to build networks. There's so many people that I meet that know way more about this than I do. And I'm more than willing to tap in to their knowledge to help me succeed. So yeah, I like the farm's a beautiful place, and I know my daughters love the place. I'd like to have what happens at the place for them to love as much, and to be able to, live and raise families there that would make me happy.
That's awesome. That's really awesome. Anything to add?
It is a scary endeavor to be standing there at the edge of the cliff, feeling the desire and the want to make that leap, but not knowing what that's going to look like and not knowing if that parachute's going to open. It is scary, but yet it's so exciting, because the more we learn about regenerative ag, or at least for me, the more I see people thinking outside of the box and following their moral compasses and what they believe. And that's exciting to think that our girls will potentially be able to find something that works for them with their passions and their things that they are good at and the talents and gifts that they have to. I don't have a vision of what our farm is going to look like. I'm excited for the endless possibilities, because, to have that freedom to think outside of the box and be able to create something that is unique to our family and to our generation.
Well, I want to thank you both for sharing your story, sharing your passion. And I like that you're starting with a plan and have it spelled out where you want to go instead of just letting it happen to you. And I think the more time you can spend on that between milkings and everything else you've got going on, the better and clearer that picture will be for the future. So I can tell you're going to be successful.
Thank
So that's pretty awesome. So we wish you the best in what you're doing in your transition. That's hard work, and only you can do it. So just, vet everything and really, my advice, just make sure that you can, that the numbers agree and that there's cushion and it aligns with what you want to do, and it'll happen. But it's a big change.
Mhm.
And congratulations for your bravery of being able to make that change. So
Thank you.
awesome.
Hmm.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate you
Thanks for
sharing.
having
Thank
us.
you.
Yep. Well, welcome back, everyone. Now we're here with Jeremy and Kelly Slack. Welcome. Tell us a little bit about your farm and where you're from.
We are from East Central Ohio, about 10 miles west of Zanesville, Ohio, right at the edge of Appalachia, pretty much.
Okay, so you got kind of a unique story on how your farm got started. Share that with us and how you've really grown pretty quickly here in a short amount of time.
There was a farm down the road that they were putting in a 20 million gallon biosolids lagoon, and we kind of blew the whistle on it, I guess, and was talking to a neighbor, and he said he wasn't really satisfied with who he had farming his farm, and it was 42 acres. We was planning on farming it on the halves, so we could kind of know where our food comes from. Just wanting to know, I guess a regenerative ag mindset without even thinking that way. And
Before you knew what the word was, let
Right.
alone how to spell it.
yes,
Correct? Yeah.
yes. So we wanted to know where our food came from, and then in that time frame, Kelly's mom actually moved in. She sold her house in Indianapolis, was living in our 42-foot fifth wheel camper in our driveway, and we was kind of nervous about where we're going to find a house because the housing market, and our neighbor came to us and said that they were dissolving. Him and his wife were getting divorced, and they offered us the farm, and it worked out, and we was able to purchase our first 93 acres. And her mom lives a quarter mile away over the hill, so my
But
mother-in-law lives
better than in your driveway.
exactly,
Oh.
and she likes it much better too. So, and so we was able to purchase that farm, and so we went from 42 acres to 100 acres the first year, and then the gentleman farming everything around our farm and the 42 acres where we live, he retired, and so we put our bid in, and we was able to pick up, and we farmed about 300 acres this year.
So you're doubling in size every year.
Yes, but it's
Boy,
not,
at this rate, you're going to farm Ohio in
No,
10
I-
or 20 years.
I don't, that's definitely not my desire, but
No.
I told my wife, I said, we have one chance, it's a retirement situation. It's not, you're not bidding against each other. You're not doing the big boy card, we just want to have the opportunity to do it. And so we wanted to be able to, and all of this land except for one farm, we didn't get it, but everything is continuous. So our long-term plan is to possibly graze cover crops and be able to, my daughters could actually walk cattle on 580 acres and not even put them on a trailer. So, and that's all our ultimate goal is be, to have livestock and then integrate with our cropping
Well, that's
situation.
pretty neat. So first generation farmers then,
Yes.
both of you.
I grew up farming.
Okay.
I grew up on a 275 cow dairy,
Okay.
which was actually my family farm that had the lagoon being put on it. And I would have been fourth generation, but family don't always see eye to eye. So,
Yeah, that'll happen.
and but we're blessed to be where we're at. And
We give God the glory for
Yeah.
everything we're doing.
Well, definitely it had to be a
Yeah.
God incidents there. I like to call it for that
Yeah.
to fall into place. So,
Mm.
very, very interesting. So, decided to come all the way from Ohio here to Iowa and to the big soil health event. First time you've been?
yes,
Why were you interested? What were some of the things you were hoping to learn when you came here?
Well, Jeremy, growing up, always farmed conventionally. So there was always plowing and disking. And as we started learning about what's in our food and how it's created, and there's the GMO, non-GMO debate, but what does that even mean? It's just letters. So once you start reading into that and figuring things out for yourself, and I think having children has something to do with it because that's like being responsible for somebody else, and you want to know, what you're giving them. And so just researching that, and just your own health, as you get older, your body doesn't regenerate on its own or at all, for sure. So you just start thinking about, how can I do the best with what I have? And, we give God the glory for everything that he's blessed us with, and we want to do things the way he wants us to do them. So we started learning about regenerative agriculture. I think I read a book, somebody on a podcast I listened to once said Gabe Brown's name. So then I found this book and I read that book, and then I started reading other books.
Joel
Salatin, and 2 years ago, I didn't know who these people were. I didn't know anything, and interestingly enough, I actually have an agriculture degree. I went to the Ohio State University and have an agriculture degree, and this is not what they teach you. I'm just going to tell you.
I know, and you paid good money for that other.
Yes. And I'm not saying anything about the education I received. I have a very nice piece of paper.
There you go.
And so, but I want to learn other things.
Mhm.
And so we decided where do we go?
And I think I work for a crane company. And so we went to a job that we had to change out a formaldehyde mixer. And so the operator and we would have to rotate every 3 hours because it would burn your lungs so bad.
Oh,
Because
great.
I mean, it's formaldehyde. I mean,
Mhm.
it's the purest form, and we're building the building, the system that builds it. And so and I asked the guy, I said, well, there can't be that many, frogs and stuff that get dissected in high school anymore. I said, it's probably not even allowed. I said, where does all this go? And he said, you'd never believe. He said, it's fed on chicken farms. And I said, what do you mean? He goes, it kills the salmonella. So they put it as an additive and so I'm like, and that night we came home and we had chicken, and I'm like, it's like I'm eating formaldehyde possibly, or, I don't know, and then without being vertically integrated, you don't know. And so that was part of our whole thing was, we want to know. And then there was a major movement in our community over the biosolids and finding out what's in that. Anything that goes down a drain in a city is possibly in that. So you're talking 8,000 chemicals, toxins, and pathogens. Well, when you start doing the research, it's really scary. And so we wanted to find out and know, and so that's our goal, is to be vertically integrated to where we can 100% say that the grain that was fed to these animals and these animals was processed on this farm, and we can provide a quality product to the family that we want to help.
So it started out feeding your own family. Now you're looking at feeding multiple families.
Yes.
And a lot more direct to consumer is to come up tomorrow, right? In those panels and such. But you've been asking some great questions about what are some value added crops we can grow? Where can we market a non-GMO corn and get a premium for it? But I think the neat part is I love both of your mindsets, is that you're looking for what those opportunities are. Where are those premium markets of value add to where you can be more diverse or grow cover crops for seed and those kind of things and pursue that. As you reach out to that, how does that feel, that daunting task to figure these things out? Is it like, oh, I'll never do it, I'm going to give up? Or where do you get that commitment and the drive to make it happen?
I think for myself, a family member once told me that I wasn't smart enough to do anything on my own. And so now it used to be a very heavy burden in my life that you always was scared of being a failure. But now, talking to everybody here that's been in the regenerative ag, there is no failures, there's learning experiences. This didn't work, this would work, and don't be afraid to ask questions. Like, I guess really, it's a different mindset than, I guess, a lot of large farmers that just, I feel like everybody here, no matter how big or small, wants to help the next person. Like, that's a totally different mindset. And so I want to be able to help the next person. So I guess that's the drive, is, I want to help my kids. I want to help other people. And I think that's the whole drive, is to being not about self, but about community, about helping other people.
And I would say the same thing. I mentioned to you earlier that I started 500 laying chickens. And a year ago, I didn't know if I even liked chickens, but it turns out I don't mind them. But when I'm struggling because mucking out their bedding, or our daughter overflowed the waters a couple weeks ago, and Jeremy had to muck out the whole barn, and he was upset about that. But anyway, when those situations happen and it's frustrating and it's cold and you're dealing with whatever you're dealing with livestock, then my customers show up and they have their children with them. And I know that they're getting a product that feeds their family in a nutritious way. And they don't have the opportunity to do those things on their own. Not everybody does. And it just makes me, I don't even get emotional, but it makes me really glad that God has blessed me with that opportunity to help them.
Well, that's good. That's good. So what are some things that, even in being here one full day, that you've heard or been immersed in, what are some things you think you'll change next year in your operation? What will you take back home with you?
Well, we've already started. We planted all of our soybean acres, which was predominantly most of our acres this year. We planted into cover crops, the diverse, several different blends. And we're trying to, I guess probably the biggest thing would be the Haney test. I'm really excited about doing that, because some of the land that we picked up has been long-term no-till, but it was long-term dead. If it was kind of evident to me, because there was some land that the farmer before me wasn't planting, and so there was a couple strips that I conjoined in together, and we made all one field, and those fields had so much more biology and life in it. And so when we planted them, just seeing the difference in it is amazing. So now I want to replicate that. And then we had a pasture field that the fence, it wasn't really a pasture field, it was just a fence row that was bad and had a bunch of saplings growing up. And so to see the different soil type from 50 feet across, to what this is what God intended. This has been, as long as I've been alive, been grass, been small pasture field, had a few cows in it in the wintertime, and he'd feed round bales out there. And just to see the fertile soil in that. And we did have to work it, because we plucked out some saplings and it was rough and picked up roots, and my daughters hate that, now, like
We
don't
not
have-
advantageous of picking up sticks, but to see the difference just right across the fence row, what's been essentially farmed to death its whole life and, you know, mined. I mean, there was a lot of mining done on the farm that we picked up. And so to see the difference and to see I mean, to the row this year, the corn was 4 feet taller and just robust and healthy. And I took the seed salesman out there and I said, this is this variety of seed consultants, whatever. And he's like, I've never seen this corn this big, you know? And I said, and I'm like, I'm thinking in my head, why is that? Well, it's not anything he did or I did. It's what God did in the ground. And so I want to replicate that on everything we can do. So, you know, and I think this conference has really helped in learning from other people that are a lot smarter than myself, you know, that how do you go about doing that, you know?
Yeah. Kelly, what do you hope to take home and put to action?
Well, I think one thing is just the mindset shift. So Darren talked about his wildlife and he said on the stage, so I was trying to figure out how to get the wildlife on my side of the fence. And I don't know how many conversations Jeremy and I have had about how do we get the wildlife on their side of the fence, because we have so much deer pressure where we live. And so instead of thinking of them as a nuisance, you know, it is a blessing that there is wildlife. They're not everything is dead. And so we have turkeys, we have raccoons, we have deer. So how do we incorporate some of his mindset? We aren't hunters, so I don't think like he does. And so, you know, seeing there is a different perspective and maybe we can utilize some of those strategies to mitigate what we perceive as a problem. It really is just kind of cohabitation, maybe.
There you go.
Yeah.
There's always a different way to look at
Yeah.
things, right? So, well, congratulations, guys, on your young farm, and I love that you're not afraid to try new ideas and pursue things. And God certainly bless you. I'm sure He'll continue to bless you. And it's really neat to see you pursuing this path.
Well, we thank you very much for taking the time to talk to us.
All right. Well, enjoy tomorrow. There's going to be more to learn, and then you get a long discussion on the way back home.
Very much so.
We're looking forward to it.
All right. Take care.
Thank you.
The AgEmerge podcast is brought to you by Ag Solutions Network. The ASN team is hands-on, digging in and invested in regenerative agriculture. Along with the proper plant nutrition and biologicals to boost your soil microbiome, we provide the ideas and implementation guidance to support you on your soil health journey. So stop farming the same way and contact Ag Solutions Network today at asn.farm.
Well, welcome back, everyone. Now we're joined by Tom, and Tom Rudolph's from Pike County, Indiana. Tell us a little bit about yourself, your farm, and also your role with the SWCD.
We farm about 500 acres in southern Indiana. I'm the third generation on the farm. My grandpa, we got a lot of news clippings from him, and one of them, he said he bought a house and they threw in 160 acres. It was pretty degraded, gullied out land, grown up in briars and saplings. He set up the Soil and Water District in Pike County then, worked for them, and then in his off time, he went to work healing the farm with a double bit axe and a mowing scythe.
So most people kind of feel committed to the farm because the family relationship, but you're committed to the farm and the conservation district here. See,
Yeah. a little
because he
bit.
started.
I don't know any better.
There you go. That's a good thing.
Yeah.
So tell us why you're here today. Quite a drive to come from southern Indiana up here to Cedar Falls, Iowa.
Yeah.
What are you here and what do you hope to learn?
Well, I heard Ray Archuleta and Gabe Brown and Gary Zimmer about 15 years ago at the Southern Indiana Grazing Conference and kind of built a fire in my mind, I guess. So I've been trying to get in what I can since then, listen to a lot of podcasts and just trying to gain all the knowledge possible on this.
So we're just getting started with the conference. We're halfway through the first day. Anything interesting? Got to hear Ray again. For me,
yeah.
It was totally new presentation.
They're
he
always a
updated.
little different. Yeah.
I think he just makes them up as he goes,
I'm
doesn't he?
pretty positive.
Okay, yep. But what have you learned so far that you think you'll take back home and apply?
Oh, that's hard to say. Like I said, I listen to so many podcasts. It's become so overwhelming at times. There's a lot of different channels, but I think all in all, they're pushing the same thing, which Because,
When did he say that?
oh, before my time.
Wow. That's pretty insightful,
Yeah, I think,
right? Because I mean, that really hasn't become well known until what, the last 5 to 10 years?
seems like it, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, people didn't think like that back then.
No,
They
and
thought about most bushels or most livestock or,
yeah, he was pretty unique. He went to Purdue for college. Believe rode a train up there, I think, and stayed all year. And what I always heard was Purdue would come down here to talk to him to learn how to grow grass.
well,
So
you said it, I
definitely-
didn't have to. No, I'm just
He
joking.
definitely had it figured out.
Yeah. So, well, that's really, really interesting. So what are you looking to change in your operation, or what's something you hope to do different as a result of being here, or all the other information that you've gathered in the last
Well,
few months?
my ultimate goal would be to heal the carbon and water cycle on our farm. Getting away from inputs, of course, would be great. We've done that some over the years. We've been cover cropping a pretty diverse mix for 5 to 7 years. I kind of lose track of time, but just get away from all the bad stuff and make it more enjoyable, you know.
Yeah.
Hopefully have a place for my son on the farm. He's looking to go to college next year, so
Now you've brought him to the SWCD meetings too, right? Not
yeah,
just- so he's getting both
I've had
sides.
him around a little
He's
bit.
getting the
Yeah.
farm and okay, because he has to continue that legacy, right? That's pretty neat. I think that's really, really neat. So any thoughts on livestock integration or value added enterprises or other ways, or, ecosystem services, payments, stuff like that, Tom?
Yeah, I'm looking pretty hard into livestock. Was the tool my grandfather used on the farm. Him and my dad ran 500 head through a year. Farmed on the contour, had a lot of multiflora rows, fence rows and terraces. But they got out of them in the 70s, and we kind of got into the corn bean rotation.
Mhm.
So I'd kind of like to try to mix it up. I'm kind of unsure on how to get into cattle. They were gone
Yeah.
before my time, so I've not had experience with livestock.
Well, one thing I can say is don't repeat the multifloral rows, fence rows.
Yeah.
I would skip that, but everything else it can be learned. So, well, no, Tom, anything else I should have talked about or asked with our brief time here together?
I think we covered it pretty well.
But I think that's a neat story of the legacy that you're continuing on with from your grandfather. And I think that's something unique about farming that no other industry has.
Yeah, I've had really good teachers. Like I said, I don't really know any better than farming this way. Like I said, there's a lot of info out here, a lot of things that contradict each other, but I think your goal should be to produce as many tons of organic matter as possible, and you get your carbon and water cycle healed up. I think the ground will take care of us if we take care of it.
That summarizes it really well. And as the Bible says, there's wisdom in the counsel of many. So you have to, listen to a lot and learn what's right for you, because ultimately you're in charge of your farm. So,
I've read a few times that Adam and Eve's name originate from soil and life.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
that's pretty important, I believe.
that is true. All right. Thanks, Tom.
Thank
Glad
you.
could stop in.
Absolutely.
Well, up next, we've got Emily Kamala here at the Big Soil Health Conference. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
So, doing a lot of things with direct to consumer, and that's been brought up a lot in the conference so far. Tell us about what you do, your role, and kind of your vision for what you're doing.
I'm actually the community manager for a company called Farm Rebel. And so I actually just get to be the cheerleader, the person who brings everyone together and helps them move through the program. So we are an educational platform. We bring people in who are interested in learning how to sell direct to consumer, and we teach them how to do that online through email marketing and direct response marketing.
Okay, so how much interest is there in this now from farmers compared to maybe just a few years ago?
There's a ton.
Why? What's driving this?
The low prices that you get at a sale barn, the fact that I would say one of the biggest complaints that we have, or one of the driving factors that we have from people, is that they're no longer making money. So their farm is on the line. Everything is on the line if they don't start finding another way or another avenue to actually increase their income. So they cannot do any succession planning because they don't have anything to give to their children.
Mhm.
They don't have a future for their children unless they are making money. So this is another option where they can actually see what's possible and to create a life that they maybe haven't had.
So like right now, the farm may support the lifestyle of the mom and dad, but there's no room for a son or daughter to
Mm.
come back to the farm to provide an income for them.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
it might not even be supporting them where they're at right now.
Good point.
Right.
Good point. So by doing this, what you're trying to do is capture more of the value of what the farmer is raising or growing
Yes.
and keep it at the farm so that they
Yes.
can bring family members or community members to their farm and stay there.
Yeah, and it might be even bigger than that, where they're actually seeing like what they're producing has incredible value, right? And so this is where I don't want to go into whether or not it's regenerative agriculture or whatever else that's available. When you're buying directly from the consumer, you have the ability to see where your food has come from. And that traceability has incredible power. It gives the producer a chance to actually see what it is that they're doing, who they're impacting, and it gives them a sense of purpose again. And so when they're able to do that, it actually it brings that rancher back home. It brings them to that place of wholeness that maybe they've missed because they don't know where those animals go. They don't actually see how people are benefiting from what they're creating. And it not just brings them income, but it gives them purpose.
So you've seen that now on
Yes.
several different farms. And I mean, it's not a unique thing where one person was excited about knowing that the Smith family ate my food.
Right.
Right. You've seen this multiple times.
Yeah.
And how does that change the farmer and why should a farmer who's listening to this now consider, the extra work and what they would think is maybe headache? What is that reward for the risk and the investment that they're going to do?
Yeah, and that's kind of a hard question to answer because it is not easy. It is not. You are taking on a whole nother position. Like how many farmers and ranchers can actually say that they have the time to do a whole nother full-time job when many of them are ranching full-time and working a full-time off-farm job just to make ends meet. So then we're asking them to do a whole nother job on top of that. And so the risk in that is huge because they're losing time, they're losing energy, they're already exhausted. The value that comes around from that is being able to see the impact right away, right? Being able to see that connection right away. So did I bring that around?
Yeah, I think
I mean,
so. So it's not what I'm
more.
getting at is not only a way to make extra money,
Yeah.
but it's also rewarding. And there's a value to that too.
Yes, because we're lacking community.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Farmers and ranchers are isolated. So how do you create connection? How do you create community? And one of the ways to do that is to actually create connection to the people that you are selling to or that you're producing for. Right?
Yeah.
So if we are stewards of the land, how do you become stewards of everything that is encompassed with that land?
So Farm Rebel, love the name.
Yes.
Really cool. And the other thing is you're helping with email campaigns, text, all those tools, but telling their story.
Yes.
And even if you're a corn-fed farmer finishing in a feedlot,
Sure.
there's people who want that product and they want to know who it came from, or if you're grass-fed or bison, or if you're produce,
Chickens, pork,
chickens,
any of it.
whatever.
Yeah.
People want to know and connect, and they're out there looking for it. So
Absolutely.
you're just helping to equip farmers with those tools and also with the knowledge of how to make that happen.
Yes.
And probably, I'm guessing, this isn't just a take a class and done. It's an ongoing support system and coaching and training and how that works.
Yes. Yes.
Or it
There are
will be.
options. There are options to continue on. Absolutely. 100%.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's good. Well,
Yeah.
awesome. How's that going to make a difference in soil health, do you think?
Well, I can't tell you what's coming with our next program that's out there, but they are looking at how to bring in land and animal, and they are looking at cow-calf operations, and they are looking at soil health and teaching. Well, I can speak into this because again, we talked about stewards of the land. So how do you become a steward of the money, right? So when you're financially viable, you learn how to actually do what you need to be doing without risking costs or risking that investment, right? So you actually are creating more of that. And when you have that ability, you have more control of the commodities and everything else. So we're not relying on larger corporations to manage our commodities. We bring it back home.
You bet. So Farm Rebel, I'm sure you can Google it, but probably farmrebel.com or
It's
what?
.org actually.
.org. Very good. You can look up the website. Anything else that you want to share or ways to connect with what you're up to?
No, you can definitely look. We are doing massive amounts of online advertising, so you're going to be able to see it there. We probably have showed up in your feed.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That is fantastic.
Thank you.
Well, congratulations for helping farmers do better and preserve the value of what they're creating and keeping it out there, even at their
Absolutely.
farmstead.
Love it. Thank
All
you
right.
for having me. I appreciate it.
We're going to probably be able to do a follow-up when your additional product comes out and is available, and it'll be fun to share that with everyone.
I love it.
All right.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Emily.
Thank you, Monty.
Yep. Well, welcome back, everyone. We're here now with Lance Irwin with the Sand County Foundation. Welcome, Lance. How are you?
Great. It's great to be here.
Well, you had an honor to hand out an award here at the Big Soil Health Event Conference. Tell us about the award and the recipient this year.
Sure. Lauren Steinlage was awarded the second ever Leopold Conservation Award for Iowa. And it's a wonderful award that recognizes farmers, ranchers, and forest landowners who are just doing the best with their conservation opportunities. And Lauren's a shining example of what we call a land ethic. And it was such an honor to get a chance to share his story here at the Big Soil Health event today.
So talk to us about the Leopold Foundation and the award. How did that become to be? The Sand County Almanac, and kind of give us a quick history lesson on all this.
Sure. So Sand County Foundation we're a 501c3. We're based in Madison, Wisconsin, though we do work all throughout the country. And we're actually founded by a godson of Leopold, who had the idea that they wanted to protect the shack property and the teachings of Aldo Leopold from a Sand County Almanac were important to share and to make sure that they still stayed relevant in today's environment. So way back in 2003, we began this program called the Leopold Conservation Award. It started in the state of Colorado, and all it was a recognition program of those farmers and ranchers voluntarily doing amazing things and doing right by the land. And since that time, it's expanded from Colorado in 2003 to now 27 states are active in the program. And it is an amazing thing because there are land stewards in all shapes and sizes, big properties, small properties, livestock, crop, forest, you name it. And they're all doing amazing things.
So these awards you give out every year. Describe the process if someone listening to this podcast knows someone maybe they want to nominate or maybe they want to self-nominate, and describe what that process is like and what it takes to be a Leopold Conservation Award winner.
Sure. So if you go to the sandcountyfoundation.org website, there's a list of all of the nomination materials. And basically what it is it's an essay form where we want you to tell your own story, or if you're nominating somebody, tell that person's story on how their conservation ethic is exemplified, how they're being innovative, how they're being adaptive, and probably most importantly, their resilience, not just their environmental resilience, but their economic resilience. How does conservation help keep the farm profitable? And we keep those open, generally speaking, from the winter into the early spring. And you can send it right in via email. And then each state will have a panel of judges, of conservation and agricultural experts from that state come in and evaluate all of the nominations. And it is important to note that that panel also includes actual farmers. And those folks will select finalists and a recipient, and we will make a video about them and hand them a check for $10,000 and make a big deal out of these superheroes. And that's really what they are, is they're conservation superheroes.
So obviously it rewards the person who wins. But what are some of the other side effects that you've seen from this? I'm sure you're creating awareness in the public, awareness amongst other farmers that, hey, I can do more, I can do better. What have been some of the results out of all this?
Sure, absolutely. One of the things that I think is really important to think about is there is no one better to teach a farmer than another farmer. And to even take that one step further, somebody else facing similar challenges in a similar type of environment. So when we can showcase examples of, let's pick a state like Illinois, if we have a farmer in Illinois using conservation practices to be economically successful, boy, that really resonates with other farmers in Illinois faced with the same type of weather situations, similar type of challenges. And we create these examples of what has worked and what hasn't worked for people, so that other farmers can be successful, and hopefully we can shorten that learning curve to have more people have conservation success.
So I think that's amazing now with you've been doing this for about 20 years, right?
Correct.
Handing out the awards and you've got the 27 states that you're covering. Are you getting to the point where there's enough great things going on that you're turning people away? I mean, obviously not everybody that wins or nominates wins. I mean,
it is a very competitive award.
That's great.
It ranges from year to year, but there are a number of folks getting nominated each year that are probably worthwhile to recognize, but we can only recognize one. So I tell those people, well, try again next year. And just because somebody doesn't win this award doesn't mean they're not doing great things. But it is a very, very competitive award. And part of that is just because it cuts across all different types of agriculture. We are literally comparing apples to oranges. In the case of somewhere here in the Midwest, we're going to compare perhaps a organic vegetable CSA versus a forestry operation versus a CAFO dairy versus a large scale row crop producer. And we're trying to figure out who's doing the best with their unique opportunities among all of these various different types of agriculture.
So what you're saying is you have a really easy job.
What I like to say is my job is to tell people good news, because quite frankly, there's not enough good news coming out of what is going on in modern agriculture. And there are good news things happening, but that doesn't always get talked about.
Well, that's awesome. I'm glad that you and your team are spreading that good news. So what have you taken away so far from this big soil health event? What's maybe an aha moment or something that kind of stood out to you in talking to people here?
I think more so than even talking to people, it's the looking around the room as the speakers are up there speaking. And I go to a lot of conferences, for better, for worse. I'm at dozens of conferences each year. And the big soil health event is really unique in that I look around the room and people have their notebooks out and they're jotting down ideas and they're kind of throwing an elbow to their neighbor and saying, "Did you hear that? Did you hear that? That's exciting. We got to try that." There's the palpable level of excitement in the room of people truly hungry for knowledge. They're not just here because they're getting a meal at the end of the day. They're here to engage with their neighbors and to try and learn something.
Well, I think it's really unique, the opportunity that the Godson decided to continue on Mr. Leopold's legacy. That's wonderful. And if you haven't read the book, that should be required reading if you're in farming.
It
right?
should.
And it's fantastic. And I'm glad to see that you're recognizing those innovators and farmers who are making it happen and really making a difference in our world. So Thank you so much. And thanks for spending some time with us today.
It was my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Well, we're back now with Nick Sennert. Welcome, Nick. Glad you could stop in. And he had a question for me, but he got roped into recording this. So appreciate you taking some time to visit with everyone.
Thanks for having me, Monty.
Nick, tell me, where are you from? And tell us about your farm.
I'm from Northwest Iowa, and I'm a crop farmer, corn and soybeans. Been utilizing regenerative practices for the last several years, beginning to adopt them on more and more of my acres.
Okay. So what does that look like for you?
Yeah, so probably 8 years ago, that just looked like no-tilling soybeans, and then beginning to utilize strip-till corn. And about 5 years ago, I started cover crops on a small scale, and that began to expand to where this past year, every acre that I farm had cover crops on it.
Wow. Yeah.
So really happy to have cover crops growing on the ground between crops there. And we're beginning to utilize more nutritionals in foliars to fix problems, as well as dabbling in biologicals in furrow.
Okay. And then the cover crops, what have you noticed some of the benefits out of the cover? Are you in the Luss area there?
I'm not. I'm
Okay,
right
so
on the
you're
edge of the glacial lobe.
So between, the Des Moines lobe.
Yeah.
Okay. Very good.
So the cover crops, it's a dynamic system that I'm continuing to be able to utilize them in greater ways. But probably the easiest step would be the rye is holding things in place, getting another root down in that system and providing some weed control early then next season. But Monty, probably the biggest thing I'm excited about was in the last year we utilized a new crop rotation to us. I got to grow a quarter section of oats for the first time. And, step out small is usually, I really like Jason Mock's fail small, fail often and fail cheap. Well, we jumped in and went with a quarter section of oats. That was grown for cover crop seed, and it was really fun to step out and grow a crop that I've never grown before, especially a cereal that was in like a whole new world of, I'd have friends and neighbors ask me, well, how are you going to do this? Well, how are you going to plant it? How are you going to harvest it? And well, we were building that ship in the air, but I've got two guys I farm with, Jess and Neil, and we got to do that together in team and learned a lot, Monty. So,
Yeah. So you're a younger farmer, right?
Yep.
You probably have grown up and never seen oats on your farm.
I'd never seen oats in my county. I don't know if
Wow.
I'd seen wheat in my county. So it's very much a corn and soybean environment. So we grew those oats. It was a good oat year. Learned a lot through harvesting in a humid environment. Most of those small grains are grown in the Dakotas for a reason. And so yeah, we learned a lot through that. We learned we needed some new equipment, and part of that equipment was to get a swather and to get a pickup head. But Monty, I know you're not from Iowa, but how many pickup heads that would fit a 680 combine do you think are in Iowa?
So I've been on this journey too.
Okay.
And I'm like, to do some of the things I want to do with some different crops, I really need to get a swather.
Yeah.
And I need to get a pickup head. So I've looked for it. I run the other color combine, so I've looked for them, and about the closest you can get is North Dakota, but most of them are in Canada.
Sure.
Is that the same for you?
That's exactly what we found. And so we got on Tractor House and took a trip to north of Fargo and came home with a pickup head and a swather.
They're really cheap.
They're not bad.
They're probably not in the greatest shape, but you can get them the frame at least.
Well, I was pretty delighted to find a pickup head that we just hooked it up and it worked. So once in a
that's
while
good.
you find a good piece of used equipment. So after we harvested those oats, we ended up straight cutting them, and it was a long process. It delayed our double crop. We double cropped with buckwheat after the oats.
Okay.
Which was also another experience of, well, how are you going to plant this? How are you going to harvest it? How are you going to treat it? And so we ended up straight cutting some of that and then swathing some of it and picking it up. The equipment worked great. And as we've worked through that whole year of that cropping system, it's got big implications for our future, as that crop was it was profitable, and it really mixed up my crop rotation. So in our area, Monty, we have a big problem with extended diapause in corn rootworm.
Yes. Mhm.
And so I'm throwing fully traded corn. I used to plant non-GMO corn, and now I had to move to fully stacked corn to fight that battle. And next year we'll be going back to non-GMO corn following that acre.
So by doing this, then you're getting a 3-year rotation,
Correct.
so that those northern corn rootworms would have emerged within your oats and buckwheat and nothing to
Exactly.
feed on.
Exactly.
So that's wonderful. Whole new management implication. And
So going forward, we're going to continue to scale that and have the equipment to scale that now. And so now it's do a little bit more and a little bit more, and perhaps over the next 2 to 3 years, get to actual a third rotation. And the cool part about that, we're at a soil health conference. I get pretty passionate about soil health, and it's tied to human health. And in that rotation, I estimate that I can save and reduce the application of herbicides 50 to 75%, and almost completely eliminate insecticides and fungicides on my farm.
okay, now wait a minute. We don't believe. How can you reduce 50 to 70%? How does that work? It's not just that oat buckwheat crop, is it? It's the impact that you're making on your corn soybeans that
Correct.
you're able to do that.
Yeah, it's a systems approach. But that
What are you going to do? You won't have that tax write-off.
I can find other things to spend.
Okay.
Yeah, it's kind of there's a lot of detail into that, but if you can plant a good thick rye ahead of your beans, that should be eliminating quite a bit of a pre-emerge herbicide.
Do I hear you growing rye in the future?
Probably
There you
that could help that could help get into that third rotation also to diversify that crop. So
How'd you, just technical question, oats, how do you keep them standing? Did you have to use any, PGRs to help them stand?
Yeah,
or did
that's-
you have any issues there?
that's a good question. Like I said, we're building the ship in the air. So it was midwinter when I actually met a gentleman at this conference who I grew those oats for.
Okay.
So I had already spread chicken litter on that farm.
Oh,
I was planning to plant corn,
Yeah.
and I heard oats could go down, and I said, well, Lord, maybe you'll make them stand. And so we had 2 tons of litter, and I'd say 90% of the oats stood really good.
Good.
And the others we got picked up pretty good. So.
Okay, so you took that away from last year at the conference. What have you taken? What do you learn this year that you're going to at this conference put into place next year?
I appreciate the question. Yeah. Looking at last year, what happened was there was really cool networking that happens at this conference. So I'm both taking away content, but also meeting like-minded people. And even last night, going out to dinner with one other guy I met last year and a new guy this year, and just being able to share ideas that we have and swap contact info. That's probably the biggest one takeaway. The other is getting into composting, Johnson Stew, and maybe implementing that on my farm also.
There you go. Well, that's awesome. So I love that you weren't afraid to step out and try something new there. And I love that it was a success, right? You
Yeah.
didn't have to
Yeah.
fail big. So that's great.
One more thing, if I can share,
Sure.
a big part of our operation is 2 years ago, 2 good friends of mine and I were all farming in the same area, and we found that labor was a real challenge as we looked to have harvest help and planting help, and we decided that we should start working together. And so 2 years ago, we bought a combine together, and we have different sizes of acreages and own that on a percentage basis. And so as we progress, all of that new equipment that I just described, we've continued to buy on percentage basis and work together as a team, each bringing different strengths to that team and complementing each other. And so I couldn't reach the goals that I just shared with you without those guys. And the cool thing is they're learning about this with me, and we're excited as a team and going a similar direction. And so when you have that synergy of like-minded people, not just at a conference that you met that farm in the next state, but actually part of the same operation, the amount of gain and momentum that you can have going forward is tremendous. So that's been a fun experience over the last 2 years also.
Yeah. The equipment's so large today,
Oh, yeah.
right? That there's no reason. It's hard to have the acres to justify some of this equipment, but boy, if you can work out ways to share that asset that is poor return on assets, typically, I mean, the more you can improve that return, the better.
Certainly.
So congratulations on figuring it out. Plus, you gain not just equipment sharing, but it sounds like you gain mind sharing there too, of a common cause of what you're trying to
Absolutely
create.
Yeah.
Cool. Awesome. We're going to sit down next year and do this again.
Sounds good.
How's that sound? But no, congratulations. It's pretty neat to hear what you got going on. And thanks for, being willing to try something new and share it with others. And we always encourage people to not be afraid to try something and do the right thing. So awesome. Glad to hear it. Thanks, Nick.
Thanks, Monty.
Well, welcome everyone. We back with Roger Wenning. Thank you for joining us. Kim had lunch with you, and she said that we just had to hear your story. So I'm looking forward to it. Tell us, Roger, where are you from, and tell us your story and why you're here.
Okay, I'm Greensburg, Indiana.
Okay.
That's southeastern part, hour southeast of Indianapolis. We have the world famous tree on the courthouse.
Okay.
So if you've ever heard of that, we have
There
a
you
tree
go.
on our courthouse.
Awesome. So do you farm there, Roger? Tell us more about what you do.
Yes, I farm with my son and my sister.
Yeah.
We also run a small excavating business, do a lot of waterways, ponds, clearing, just, mostly we try to stick with agriculture stuff. I just like farmers better.
There you go.
We do tiling also in the winter, but we're not a big farm, about 900 acres, enough to be an aggravation.
There you go. So have you been to the Big Soil Health event before?
No, this is my first trip.
Okay. What interested you in coming over?
Well, I saw the lineup of speakers and I thought, boy, that'd be nice to go to, but I got too much work to do. I don't think I can And about 2 weeks ago, Liz Haney started on me,
Uh-oh. Then you're in trouble.
texting and whatnot and stuff that, are you coming? I don't think so. Yes, you are. You will be here. Well, what do you say then when Liz says you're going to do it?
Yeah, that's true.
There's not much choice.
Yeah.
So, but I love the lineup of speakers. I've been good friends with some of them for a long time. Several of them have been to my farm in the past. I have field day every year, and some of the people have been there and just been really good friends.
So how long you been doing cover crops or reduced tillage, no tillage on your farm?
That's a hard one for sure. Back in the 80s, I keep thinking back, and I was saying around 2000, but then I have to keep backing up. Because in the early mid 80s, I started running. I have some hilly ground, and it was all washing down in the creek. And I thought, well, this is not going to work. I can't keep losing. We don't have much topsoil where I'm at anyway. So I started running lead up and down the valleys and contouring around my hills. I didn't know it was cover crop. I just was doing it. It worked. I was trying to get with no-till. I knew I needed to. I struggled a little with it on some. It worked on those hills where I was putting the cover crops, that I can call them now, because before, when I tilled them, just big old nasty clods, you could never break down. You had to wait for a good rain to get the corn to come up. It just didn't. And when I started doing this, I could no-till and the crops would come right up. It worked. But my flatter areas were very wet, cold, nasty soils. So in the early 90s, I bought a tile plow. My brother and I went together because I knew to make no-till, I had to get that excess water out. So when I got that, we started clearing the excess water and no-till started working. And I don't know, I started messing around, and by the mid 90s, I'd learned about annual ryegrass. I had some really hard spots in my fields and some almost fragipan type underneath, and water couldn't go through. And a couple areas where water wouldn't, they were so compacted, like half-acre area, there was 6 inches of water sitting in it. And you drive right through it. Put tile, it sealed back over. So I gave up on, I pulled every piece of steel possible through it. Nothing worked. I gave up. 15 years later, I looked at my son and I said, where is that? Those couple spots, they were gone. There was a 6-inch depression that sat full of water. There was no depression anymore. I had gotten air and life back into that soil. It had lifted it itself back up, leveled out, and you can't see it on a yield monitor. That was a moment that, okay. But and part of it, I had to find something back in the 80s. I'm old enough to know what that was. And I guess let's say I survived it. I don't know how. 1983, I was broke. I had to do something. And the reduced tillage to no-till saved me money. And then started increasing yields. So by the later 90s, I was making money. Things were coming up, looking better. My yields went from my poor ground 30 bushel an acre below the county average, which for my soils was right, to today I'm 40 bushel over county average. So this soil health. Now, we talk no-till. We talk cover crops. That also included, I started grid sampling in the 80s when that wasn't cool, but I set flags and made my little square grids and set the fertilizer spreader and the lime spreader to take care of it. That's one of the advantages to being a small farmer. Yeah. You can do those kind of things I figured if I can make, you know, $50 or $100 an acre on a small acreage versus break even on 1,000 acres or more, which makes more sense? No, I can't go and brag to my neighbors, I farm more than you do, but I can go brag I make more money than you do. So
That goes over well, doesn't it?
yeah, yeah. But to me, that was, and I was the crazy guy in the community.
Okay.
I
Was?
knew some stories going around about me, and I think the neighbors were discussing who would get which parcel on my farm when I finally went broke. But today
They're still waiting.
they're coming to me like, okay, how do I do this on my farm?
Well, that's great.
They started doing that. So that made me, okay, maybe this
So
works.
really in your story, you're 20 years ahead of the curve in most things. You're mid 80s on no-till,
Probably.
which that's 20 years ahead. You're definitely 20, 30 years ahead on the cover crop thing, the pattern tiling.
Mhm.
That's finally getting a lot of press here lately,
Oh, okay.
you know, but
Yeah.
having your own
Right.
plow and doing
Right,
it,
right.
you know, that in the early 90s, that's
Mhm.
definitely 10, 20 years ahead of the curve.
Oh, yeah.
Well, looking at, you know, testing and various products that you're doing, what else do you see or ideas you picked up while being here that you're going to implement in the future? What about crop rotations and diversity? Anything or anything?
We have been corn bean
Mhm.
with some wheat. That got started about 15 years ago. Dale Much out of University of Michigan was down one of my field days. I'd gotten to be friends with him, and they were showing the advantages to wheat. I hated wheat ever since I got rid of the hogs around 2000. I couldn't afford them anymore. I kind of had to give that habit up, but we put wheat back in some. There's some big advantages to that. My son's got a few cows and calves. We're working, pasturing them on some areas of the field, seeing, don't know if we're going to grow that or not. Down around us, there's not much big areas with cattle and stuff, but we're not, I love the idea, but we are looking at adding some manure and some stuff to it just because of the biological effects of the manure. New farm, that's really bad. We did line up a bunch of litter to put on it. I think is really, because I mean, we love the microbes and all them, and that kind of manure is kind of a steroid for your microbes. So,
well, talk to like your neighbors come over and ask them what you're doing. How do you find it a good way to get other farmers to consider doing things differently, no matter what they're doing, but something that's more aligned with the soil health principles? What advice would you have for them?
well, first they got to be willing to talk. They have to be willing to make a change, not do it like their dad and grandpa did it. You need to be ready to see improvement. You've got to be committed. I mean, the first time I planted green, I was forced to. I had some rye out and I didn't get sprayed. And I had no spray coop at the time, and I couldn't see over it out of the spray coop. I mean, that's how big it was. And I had 200 acres of that. So I didn't have a choice but to make it work. My son came out to plant. He called me, said, I'm quitting, I'm done. So, whoa. I grabbed up the rubber closing wheels, and the electric impact, and we went out to the field, met him, and we changed all the closing wheels from the spikes to them.
They make a great rake in
they
tall covers, don't they?
Oh yeah, they roll stuff up nice. I mean, we run a conventional planter other than the closing wheels. We don't have no-till cutters or row cleaners anymore, just with that soft. The soil over the years has gotten so mellow. We rented a farm about 3 years ago that had been tillaged and pillaged, and
I'm gonna
We
use
read.
that quote,
Oh.
pillaged and pillaged. I like
Okay,
that. Yeah.
whatever. But we had been planting my son does most of the planting. There's too many buttons and stuff on the planter. I can do some, but he's on speed dial when I get in. Second notch from the lightest down pressure. 2.5, 2 3/4 inches easy. Hit this new farm. He got off, and that's why I like him planting, because he's always checking, digging. He wasn't getting corn in 1/2 inch. We had to go up to I don't know if he was on the highest down pressure or second from highest down pressure to get corn 2 inches in the ground. I mean, that's another reason why I know I'm doing what I should be. It just tells you when you see those things.
Yeah. No, I think that's a great way to say it. So, no, look forward to what you're going to be coming out with next. And as you and your son continue to do better and better all the time. And that's a great example there of what's going on between long-term that you farmed and now we call it regenerative, right?
Yeah, I guess that
we didn't know what that was.
We
you know.
didn't. Yeah,
We'll see what the term is next year.
Yeah,
but
we went soil health, but I guess that's gone now.
yeah,
and
yeah,
Regen, we went sustainable.
yeah,
and
yeah, all that.
It's all just terminology,
Right. It's just
mean, I-
should just be called doing the right thing.
Well, yeah. I mean, that's all I could call it when I started, because we didn't have all these buzzwords.
That's right. So, but no, thanks for sharing your story and
Yeah.
and what you got going on there. And
Okay.
it's a commitment that you got to make for multiple years.
Yes, you
But
have to.
but when you go back and you rented that ground that had been tillaged
Mm-hmm.
and pillaged, and you just see that stark reminder, it's shocking, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And we've got a big test going. NRCS came out with some money. When I rented the farm, I talked to our state soil health specialist, and she got all excited. And pretty soon I was digging pits out in that field, my 25-year continuous healthy field, and the neighbors, that'll always be tillage pillaged. And we went in the woods, dug holes, had 6 soil scientists for NRCS spent 2 weeks out there. And I don't know how many tons of soil they sent to Lincoln, Nebraska, but it was. So we're just going to try to track this and see what improvements, because I said, it took me 20 years on mine to figure it out. Most of it was I had to do it by myself. There was nobody there to help me. We had just a few, 3 or 4 of them out there, but there wasn't much. And now I'm not very patient. So I said, 5 years, I intend to have this farm smoking.
There you go.
But, and you can tell with cover crops, 5 years. I walk out in the fields and, I get made a lot of fun of, but I go barefooted out there all the time. And I walk on the field and it's like, first year is like walking concrete. Year 3 or 4, you're starting to feel a little bit of carpet under your feet. By year 5 and then on up, and definitely 7, 8, there's a nice thick pad under that carpet.
Full shag going on.
Yeah, it just feels good. So,
well, that's a good way to do it. I've always said you need to use all your senses in a field, and there's people that tell you about earthing and those kind of ththings too, and it's not a bad deal for you. And
I think there's something to that.
Yep,
I'm
yep.
not totally against that. I
Yeah.
mean, the ion, the pluses and
Sure,
minuses
sure.
and stuff to equalize them.
yeah, normally when you hear new ideas, it's the first thing is to instantly think, well, that's crazy, right?
Mhm.
But
Well,
take a little more time, explore, and have an open mind. And it's interesting what you can learn.
well, neighbors still think I'm nuts. They
Oh,
see
that's
me out
okay.
there farming barefoot.
You know what I say?
Just the way it is. Okay.
If they're talking about you, they're leaving everyone else alone,
Hey,
right? Think
that's
of
a
the
good way to think
think
about
of the community service you're providing.
it. That's a good way to think about it. Thank you.
All right,
Appreciate
Roger, thanks for
that.
joining us. And,
Okay.
have a great 24 and order the weather a little better,
So-
would you?
Yeah, it'd be nice.
Okay, there you go. Take care.
Okay.
Well, now we're joined by Cameron Mills from Walton, Indiana. Welcome, Cameron. How are you doing?
Thanks. Great for having me, Monty.
We're on the second day. Cameron's up later on this afternoon to talk about his direct-to-consumer business, but Cameron's had a chance to speak at our field day before. I first met him when he was talking at a Beck's field day about cover crops, and that was probably 8-10 years ago or so, and then kind of reconnected with him here in the last few years. But we get a chance to bounce a lot of ideas off each other, especially when we're operating equipment, when there's nothing else to do but go back and forth and talk on the phone. So we've shared a lot of ideas on things to do and in the regenerative space. And I just would love for you to kind of bring people up to speed about your farm, your family, and your journey from, looking at no-till and cover crops to where you're at today.
Well, thanks for the opportunity, Monty. I guess that we'll start with the family aspect of it first, because honestly, without our support or my support that I've had from my family, there would absolutely be, we wouldn't be where we're at today. Really, my wife should be the one here doing the interview because she works 10 times harder than I do. I get to go to meetings and get to do visit and learn, and she's at home getting to pack boxes and working on ads and working on Facebook posts and things like that for our direct-to-consumer business. So she really gets all the credit. There's no question about it. Our kids really, too, have done a really good job of jumping in as a family project. Our oldest has moved on to grad school now to be a chiropractor, but he got his fair share while he was here, and so all the other kids are jumping in, and it's kind of like a big family project. Someday it's torture for them. They would probably would think that, but as it should be good for everybody, I think it's a really good deal. Our business, the farm, we farm about 3,800 acres. It's all been no-till since 2000. Was when we started no-till. Started in cover crops about 2006, and really just started slow like everybody else does, right? We jumped in as far as when we switched the farm to no-till, it was all at once. When we switched to cover crops, we started a little bit slower. We started with 100 acres, and then we went to 200 acres, and we started accelerating. And by 2010, everything was covered. And that's our goal every year, to just keep everything covered. Through our journey of learning, we learned that diversity, we heard that over and over and over in all the meetings we ever went to, is you got to get more diverse. So we did. We started trying to get more diverse cover crops on our operation. And then we started bringing more cash crops into our operation, which, we're in Indiana. Indiana is still in the corn belt. So you plant corn, soybeans in the area. And soybeans is the stepchild. So when we started looking at wheat or other cereal grains in the operation as a way to get more diverse cover crops in, well, the neighbors really thought we were off a rocker, since we didn't have hogs or anything that we needed to put the manure on behind the wheat. So we grow triticale now, we grow barley, we grow buckwheat, we grow open pollinated corn, we grow some heritage wheats, all for small milling purposes for our direct-to-consumer business. We have grass-fed beef, pork, and pastured pork and pastured poultry that we also do direct-to-consumer. And so what's been interesting about this whole journey, as we've strung this all through, is that the response from the consumer, and what has been interesting is they're almost pushing us faster than we can go. Their interest level. So they are asking for things that we were not prepared to do. We weren't prepared to go into the heritage grain business. We have people asking for the heritage grains now that they can mill on their own countertops at home. Not everybody, but some. And wasn't prepared for that. We'll probably, dive into that. That won't be a very large scale deal. But again, we have customers that, of course, my wife deals with the customers firsthand, but she relays the stories that we had another customer says they will not buy any protein from the grocery store. They're going to buy all their protein from us. So that's pretty cool. That you hear those stories all the time. And so we have a neighbor lady that's now making sourdough bread, that she started a little business and was not expecting. She was just doing it for some friends, and it kind of expanded. Now she's got to tell people, no, I'm not baking today, because she's out. So we've kind of visited with her about the heritage grain flour. We've taken her some. She's baking with it currently, and we'll see how she likes it. But I think that's going to be a possibility moving forward, especially since we just put in a little retail, or we're working on putting in a little retail space.
Okay, so 3,800 acre operation, not small by any means, but all of these other enterprises that you've got started are smaller. So how would another farmer of scale consider doing these things? I mean, because it takes a lot of mind share to do this, and is there a risk of that taken away from your primary operation? How do you balance that?
That's a very good question. I'm nuts. That would be the easy answer, because this is not easy. If you want something simple, just grow corn and soybeans. That's the simple thing to do. However, there is a lot of reward involved with this, seeing what the customers think. There is money to be made in this space. Again, a lot of work. So I would never tell anybody, if you want things to be easier, you may not want to go down this path, or start really slowly. And that's what we did. We started this, 4 or 5 years ago as a slow, just really small building, and it has accelerated, and I think it will continue to accelerate. But it is a balance. It is a time management is my biggest problem. It's not capital. It's time management for myself and our labor.
So talk about the reward part. You're not talking, when everybody thinks about corn and soybeans, it's profit per acre, right? And that's, hey, I get to run shiny equipment, and I'm feeding the world, and hopefully I'll have pick up enough acres that my son or daughter can come into the operation, right? That's kind of the reward there. Talk about some of the rewards that you found in the meat and the milling business that you wouldn't be able to experience if you were just doing the corn, soybean, and even the corn, soybean and cover crop business.
So through the cover crop side of things, got to meet and work with a lot of farmers all over the Midwest, really, to help them down their journey, as we have experienced in some of our good experiences and some of our failures. So that has been interesting. But meeting the consumer, when you get to meet people that aren't really associated with agriculture, and so you get to kind of tell your story of why you're doing what you're doing, why we believe what we believe, how we take care of the animals. They come right to the farm to pick their meat up, and they can see the cattle at the farm. They can see the pigs across the road or wherever they're at. And so it's been interesting for them to learn as we learn. And so part of the deal is education, working with our consumers. So my wife does a big part. I kind of relay what we're doing. My wife puts it in a intelligent form that she can then tell to the consumers, that doesn't make me or us sound like an idiot, which if I did, they'd think they were talking to a kindergartner. So fortunately, she's very good at interpreting my stammering around into an intelligent thing that she can put on the customers. But I think as far as the next generation, you mentioned that, bring that back. That is where our industry, no matter whether you're in any part of agriculture, I think we've done a big disservice for our next several generations. I was very blessed in my opportunities that when it was my time to farm, even though that wasn't the plan, my plan wasn't to farm because our farm was so small when I took over. I was planning on doing something else. My dad ended up stepping aside, and that was my opportunity. So to go down that path, that's kind of how I'm looking for the next generation. And kind of why we looked at this direct consumer business was like a sideline game, but it was also my exit strategy. So if we're able to build this up to serve our community with good, nutritious products, and we consider this on, then I can slowly ease out of the row crop operation if my son or daughter decides to come back. Because I don't want to be that long-term burden on the operation. We want to educate and be able to move that next generation in so that they can make their mark on agriculture.
Plus, there's a lot more diversity of opportunity for family members to be a part of the farm, because maybe they don't like sitting in a cab driving back and forth, 16 hours a day. Maybe that's just not their thing. We enjoy it, right? But maybe they won't. So now there's marketing opportunities, there's livestock care opportunities, there's just a bigger opportunity for them to be a part of the farm, right?
Absolutely. My youngest son, who has aspirations at this point of coming back to the farm, who is in the operation right now, he loves the cattle. That's his thing. We kind of jokingly call him the cattle whisperer, because he's very good at managing the cattle and moving them and doing it. And that's his love. I keep trying to push him the other direction because I also like the livestock and kind of want to move that way. So
what you're saying is you don't want the row crops to have to be your exit strategy. You want the oh man.
Exactly. I've done that for the last 25 years, and I've enjoyed it immensely. It's been very good for our family. But I would be very happy just following the cows around as I get older. That'd be just fine.
Oh, there you go. So you get a chance to go to a lot of the meetings in the soil health space. What have you taken away at this meeting, or what are some things that you're looking to, with all the connection that you have, to implement this coming season on your farm?
Well, obviously, there's a tremendous amount of knowledge that's been exuded at this conference. One of the things that I think is we still want to continue reducing our total load of nutrients over time, but we are definitely looking to manage them more precisely. So, foliars, putting the right nutrient on at the right time, those type of things. We've been working on that for a while, but we'd like to continue to work on that. One of the other things that I think that sometimes gets brushed over in a conference like this is, in a conference like this, we have people from all over the country here. It's not just Iowa. So there's people from a large area that have come together seeking the same common goal, which is to improve their operation, improve their lifestyle. And so that's the cool thing. Not everybody here is doing the exact same thing. We're heading the same direction, but we're not all getting there the same way. And that's where I think, again, big ag industry, we've made everything about yield. We've made everything about it has one way to do it. And I think in this space, there's a multitude of ways to get there. And I think embracing each other's ability to do things differently is great, because I'm not going to do maybe what the guys in Iowa are doing or Minnesota are doing. That's okay. They can do whatever they want as long as we're all heading to the same goal. It's a great opportunity to visit and maybe pull that one little piece of information that I can say, okay, I need to look at that a little further.
So back to what you started with when we first started talking here is your family. You brought Jeffrey with, and
he's here.
You wanted him to be here so you'd have a chance to, visit on the truck and allow him to see that, hey, it's just not Dad talking about this stuff. There's other people. What have you guys had a chance to do a little download yet, or are you going to do that on the way home?
I think that'll be this evening on the way home. Hopefully, we've talked a little bit about things. It's interesting to see his perspective as a 19-year-old, right? So, I mean, it's definitely different than my own. He's got a lot to learn to be able to manage a farm, but I'm excited. It's fun to have him along, work with him every day, at least here in the last several months. So, to have him along for this, to see what he responds to, I expect some interesting conversations on the way home.
Now, how is he like being out there at the booth? You've got some of your milled products here and your buckwheat honey. He's been interacting with people and seeing that. How's he doing, Dad?
He's doing better than I would do, I'll admit. I would love to have my wife here because that's her bread and butter, but he's doing very well, amazingly well, and he's enjoying it. I just wish he maybe could get in the sessions a little bit more from time to time.
Yeah.
But he's doing well.
Well, any other thoughts before we get back to the sessions like you're talking about?
No, I think I've about exhausted everything.
Well, we're looking forward to what you got to share this afternoon and getting direct to consumer. And, that's certainly been a theme of a lot of people we've talked about today. There's a lot of interest here. So this isn't, I think we're beyond the fad stage, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I definitely think we're beyond the fad. I think in this space, I think everybody can make it what they want to make it. If they want to, especially if they have the region and the location and the ability to connect with people, I think they can blow this up to be whatever they want. If they want it to be a little sideline game that they just play with, that's perfectly awesome. If they want to blow it up and really make it part of their operation, I think that's very possible. I mean, the demand is there. There's no question about it.
Well, that's awesome. I bet we're going to hear a lot more about that this afternoon.
We'll see. Yeah. Hopefully.
Well, we're going to have you back sometime for a full episode and a big download on everything that you're doing there with your family on your regenerative farm. But sure, thank you for joining us, and it's great to see you in person, not just on the phone in the combine. So thanks for sharing your thoughts, ideas, and it's neat to see how a large scale operation can make these things happen too.
Thanks, Monty. Appreciate the opportunity.
Yep. Wow. I sure hope you were encouraged as you listened to these stories and how folks just like you are changing their paradigm, rethinking the way they are running and managing their operations. So if you'd like to learn more about what we're doing to help growers make powerful changes to their practices, check out our website at asn.farm. And there you can click on links to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, and YouTube. There's a lot of great things happening and always something to learn. Thanks for listening.